Make her wait. The real decision-maker hasn't arrived yet. For 3 humiliating hours, Arcadia Quantum's CEO left a black woman sitting in the lobby, denied her coffee, questioned her identity twice, and welcomed white businessmen who didn't even have appointments. Apparently, dignity comes with a dress code, and respect only activates after a bank balance is revealed. But when Simone Hayes finally opened her briefcase, the laughter died instantly. She wasn't an assistant, a job applicant, or someone's messenger. She was the founder controlling the $500 million deal keeping their company alive. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and stay until the end because this downfall will not disappoint. At 8:55 on Monday morning, Dr. Simone Hayes stepped into the executive lobby on the 42nd floor of Arcadia Quantum's Manhattan headquarters. The space looked designed to intimidate anyone without a title. Polished marble floors, towering glass walls, silent elevators and reception desks, so immaculate they seemed untouched by human hands. Beyond a set of transparent security doors, assistants hurried between conference rooms carrying tablets, coffee trays, and folders stamped confidential. Arcadia was preparing for the most important deal in its history, a $500 million partnership that could determine whether the company expanded or collapsed under its growing debt. Simone arrived alone, wearing a sharply tailored red suit over a simple white blouse. She carried no luxury handbag, wore no extravagant jewelry, and brought no entourage to announce her importance. Only a black leather case rested in her hand. She approached the reception desk and addressed the woman behind it with quiet confidence. "Good morning, Dr. Simone Hayes. I have a 9 o'clock meeting with Victor Langford." June Alvarez immediately found the appointment. Simone's name was highlighted in the system marked VIP and accompanied by a security code granting direct access to the executive conference room. Everything was correct, yet June hesitated. Inside his office, Victor Langford received the notification and glanced at the lobby camera. He saw Simone standing alone beside the desk and frowned. "She came by herself?" he asked. June confirmed that she had. Victor barely considered the information before deciding Simone could not possibly be the person he was expecting. The head of a $500 million investment fund, in his mind, would arrive surrounded by lawyers, assistants, security, and people carrying expensive equipment. The woman in the red suit looked too ordinary, too self-contained, and far too calm. "She's probably an assistant dropping off documents," he said. "Do not let her through until the person with signing authority arrives." June looked back at the screen displaying Dr. Simone Hayes' full name, but Victor had already ended the call. When she informed Simone there would be a brief delay, Simone did not argue. She simply glanced at the glass doors behind June and said, "My appointment was confirmed." June gave an apologetic smile that said she understood, but lacked the courage to challenge the order. 7 minutes later, 2 white businessmen stepped out of the elevator without appointments. Victor appeared almost immediately. He greeted them by name, laughed at a private joke, and shook their hands with both of his. "Come in. We'll make room," he said, waving them through the same glass doors Simone had been forbidden to cross. An assistant offered them coffee before they had taken 5 steps. Simone watched the doors close behind them. She said nothing. Then Caleb Winslow, Arcadia's chief commercial officer, entered the lobby while reading a message on his phone. He slowed when he noticed her, looked her over from her shoes to her hair, and turned toward June. "Administrative candidate," he asked loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. A few employees laughed, not because the comment was clever, but because Caleb was powerful, and laughing at powerful men was often safer than remaining silent. June's face tightened. "She has an appointment," she said carefully. Caleb shrugged. "Everyone claims that when they want to get upstairs." Simone moved to a blue velvet chair in the corner of the lobby, crossed one leg over the other, and opened her tablet. She recorded the time she had arrived. She noted when the 2 unregistered businessmen had been admitted. She wrote down Victor's name, Caleb's comment, June's visible discomfort, and the exact language used to deny her access. She was not documenting wounded feelings. She was documenting behavior. At 9:12, June poured a cup of coffee and started toward her. But Caleb intercepted her near the desk. "Premium service is for confirmed guests," he said. "We do not reward people for showing up early and demanding attention." Simone heard every word. She did not look up. June quietly returned the cup to the tray. At 9, 20 Victor entered the main conference room and addressed a dozen executives gathered around a long glass table. Our $500 million client could arrive at any moment, he announced. I want everyone prepared. Outside, the client he was waiting for sat less than 30 feet away. Simone's phone vibrated. The message came from Madeline Cross, chairwoman of Arcadia Quantum's board. Have they recognized you yet? Simone looked through the glass at Victor standing beside a presentation bearing the Hayes Meridian Capital logo. Then she typed, "No, please do not intervene." She placed the phone down and opened the digital contract only she had authority to approve. Her finger moved to a provision near the end of the document, Clause 14, material violations of ethics, transparency, or integrity during due diligence. Simone marked the line and checked the time again. 25 minutes had passed. So far, Victor's behavior could still be dismissed as arrogance or incompetence, but the waiting had only begun. During the next hour, he would turn a careless insult into deliberate humiliation and give Simone far more evidence than she had expected to find. By 9:30, the executive lobby on the 42nd floor had become noticeably busier. Elevators opened every few minutes, releasing consultants, attorneys' department heads, and guests carrying leather portfolios and branded folders. Conversations overlapped beneath the soft hum of recessed lighting. Assistants crossed the marble floor with trays of coffee, while screens outside the conference rooms displayed the morning's schedule. Simone Hayes remained seated in the blue velvet chair where she had been left more than half an hour earlier. No one had offered an explanation. No one had updated her. At 9:34, she closed her tablet, stood, and returned to the reception desk. "Has my meeting been rescheduled?" she asked. June Alvarez checked the system again, even though she already knew what it would say. The appointment remained marked, approved. Simone's full name was still highlighted, and the access authorization had not changed. June called Victor Langford's office for the second time. Caleb Winslow answered. "She is still here," June said carefully. "Her name is Simone Hayes, and the system confirms the appointment." Caleb sounded irritated. "Tell her to wait. We are expecting Miss Hayes." June lowered her voice. "I believe the woman standing here is Miss Hayes." There was a short pause, followed by a dismissive laugh. "There are plenty of people named Hayes. The actual representative will arrive with a proper team." A group of investors from Boston entered the lobby moments later. There were 4 of them, all wearing expensive dark suits, talking loudly about a delayed flight and a dinner reservation. None had appointments on the executive schedule, but Caleb appeared almost immediately to greet them. He shook their hands, called one of them an old friend, and instructed June to prepare refreshments. Although several seats remained empty, Caleb pointed toward Simone's chair. "We need that area for strategic partners." Simone looked around the spacious lobby, then back at him. "Where would you like me to sit?" Caleb gestured toward a narrow, rigid chair beside the service elevator far from the main reception area. "Over there will be fine." Employees passing through the lobby noticed. Some slowed down. Others lowered their eyes and kept walking. No one wanted to challenge the man widely known as Victor's most trusted lieutenant. Simone picked up her case and moved without protest, but she recorded the time before sitting down again. Lena Park, a compliance analyst returning from a meeting, stopped when she saw Simone's face. She had watched a recorded speech from the Global Investment Governance Forum only months earlier. The speaker had been Dr. Simone Hayes, founder of Hayes Meridian Capital. Lena studied the woman in the red suit and felt a cold pressure build in her chest. She approached Caleb and spoke quietly. "I think that may actually be Dr. Hayes." Caleb barely glanced at Simone. "People who manage $500 million do not arrive alone without security." Lena tried again. "I remember her from a governance panel." Caleb gave her a warning look. "Then remember to stay inside your department." Determined to prove that Simone did not belong among the company's elite guests, Caleb called security. Martin Cole arrived several minutes later, visibly uncomfortable, when Caleb ordered him to verify Simone's identity again. Martin looked toward June, who gave a small, helpless nod. "Ma'am, I need to see identification," he said. Simone opened her wallet and handed him her government-issued card. Martin compared the photograph name and date of birth with the visitor record. Everything matched perfectly. Simone waited until he returned it. "Did the 4 gentlemen who entered without appointments have to show identification?" Martin's mouth opened, but no answer came. Simone turned to Caleb. "Why were 2 men without scheduled meetings admitted before me?" Caleb folded his arms. "They are known business partners. Why has my identity been confirmed twice while theirs was accepted without question? He avoided the question. Simone continued, her voice controlled. Why do you assume the person managing the fund must arrive with someone else? More specifically, why do you assume that person must be a man? The lobby went quiet enough for several employees to hear the tension. Caleb's expression hardened. You are turning a routine security procedure into something it is not. Then, explain the routine, Simone replied. Does it apply equally? Caleb warned that her behavior could result in the meeting being cancelled. Simone looked directly at him. You do not have the authority to cancel this meeting. Caleb laughed, convinced she was exaggerating her importance. He turned away as though the conversation had ended. Simone opened a secure message window on her tablet and contacted her legal counsel. Her instruction was brief. Activate the Clause 14 record. Do not terminate the transaction. Not yet. The message changed the meaning of everything that had occurred. She was no longer documenting one executive's arrogance. She was examining whether Arcadia Quantum had misrepresented its ethical standards during the due diligence process for a $500 million agreement. At the reception desk, Lena noticed a new internal note on June's screen. While Caleb spoke with the Boston investors, she discreetly photographed it with her phone. The message read, Do not allow the woman in the red suit into the executive area until the real Hayes Meridian representative arrives. Lena stared at the image. It was no longer possible to call the situation a misunderstanding. She now possessed evidence of a deliberate order, but exposing it could cost her career before the morning was over. By 1115, Simone Hayes had been waiting in Arcadia Quantum's executive lobby for more than 2 hours. Inside the main conference room, Victor Langford's patience was beginning to fracture. The presentation screens were ready. The legal team had arranged the contracts in perfect order, and every department head had been instructed to treat the Hayes Meridian partnership as the most important deal of the year. Yet no representative had entered the room, and no one from the fund had joined the secure video call. Owen Price, Arcadia's chief financial officer, checked the connection once more before speaking. Hayes Meridian has not logged in, and no authorized representative has been admitted. Victor slammed his pen against the table. They are making us wait on purpose. This is a power play. Caleb Winslow leaned back in his chair and mentioned the woman outside with the same last name, but dismissed her as a support employee carrying paperwork. Victor stood. If the client wanted to play games, he would confront whoever had been sent ahead. He walked into the lobby with Caleb and several department heads behind him. Simone remained, seated near the service elevator, reading notes on her tablet. Victor stopped in front of her without greeting her or acknowledging how long she had been waiting. Where is your superior? He asked. Simone looked up slowly. Who are you referring to? Victor's irritation deepened. The person authorized to sign the contract. That person has been here since 8:55. Victor glanced around the lobby as if expecting someone important to step out from behind a glass wall. Then call Mr. Hayes and tell him the CEO of Arcadia Quantum cannot wait any longer. Simone closed her tablet. There is no Mr. Hayes. Caleb stepped forward with a condescending smile. This is not the time for jokes. He handed her a business card and told her to email the documents and reschedule when the head of the fund was available. Simone said nothing. She placed her black leather case on the reception table and opened it. First came the $500 million master agreement, then the Hayes Meridian board resolution. Finally, she placed the signing authorization on top. The first page carried a single line in bold type, Final Approving Authority Dr. Simone, Elise Hayes, founder and chief executive officer. The lobby fell silent. Victor picked up the document and read the name twice. The color drained from his face. Caleb's smile vanished before he could hide it. Victor's voice changed immediately. Dr. Hayes, there has clearly been a misunderstanding. Please allow me to escort you into the conference room. We can arrange lunch and begin properly. Simone did not move. Would you be apologizing if I did not control $500 million? Victor hesitated, then called the incident an administrative error. Simone asked why the same error had not delayed the men who arrived without appointments, why her identity had been checked twice, and why his staff had assumed the person managing the fund had to be someone else. Victor turned toward June. Reception failed to communicate who you were. June's face went pale. She opened her mouth to explain, but Caleb gave her a sharp look that silenced her. Simone noticed. I want the call logs, visitor notes, internal instructions, and lobby security footage. Victor stiffened. Internal data cannot be released to an outside party. Simone opened the contract to the due diligence appendix and pointed to Arcadia's obligation to provide complete cooperation in ethical and governance reviews. Owen stepped closer and read the clause. His expression changed. If Arcadia refused, Hayes Meridian could freeze the entire transaction immediately. Security was ordered to preserve the footage. Minutes later, the system administrator returned with alarming news. 47 minutes of lobby video had been marked for automatic deletion. The command had been issued from an executive-level account only moments after Victor learned Simone's identity. Simone looked directly at him. 3 hours ago, this might have been about how you treated one person. Now someone inside your company is attempting to destroy evidence. Her identity had frightened Victor, but the person who had placed him inside this trap had not yet appeared. The executive lobby was temporarily sealed while Arcadia Quantum's security team preserved the remaining camera data. Employees gathered behind the glass partitions, pretending to work while watching the crisis unfold. Victor Langford wanted the confrontation moved into a private conference room immediately. He lowered his voice and told Simone Hayes that sensitive corporate matters should not be discussed in front of junior staff. Simone remained beside the reception desk. "The conduct happened here," she said. "The response will happen here." Victor's jaw tightened, but before he could object, the large display mounted on the lobby wall flickered to life. Madeline Cross, chairwoman of Arcadia Quantum's board, appeared on the screen with 6 directors and the company's outside counsel seated in separate video windows. Victor stepped forward at once, eager to control the story. He claimed Simone had arrived without following the proper executive protocol, causing confusion and interrupting a critical business meeting. Madeline did not allow him to finish. "I was the one who asked Dr. Hayes to arrive alone," she said. The words silenced the lobby. Madeline explained that Hayes Meridian Capital had received repeated warnings about Arcadia's internal culture during the final stages of due diligence. Former employees had described discriminatory promotion practices, selective enforcement of security rules, and a pattern of dismissing complaints against senior executives. Before approving the $500 million transaction, Simone and the board had agreed to conduct an unannounced observation. Victor had not been required to recognize Simone by appearance, but her name, appointment, time, access code, and executive clearance had all been entered correctly into Arcadia's system. "This was never a test of whether you could recognize a wealthy woman," Madeline said. "It was a test of how this company treated a black woman when she did not arrive surrounded by visible status." Victor's face hardened. He accused Madeline of setting a trap to humiliate him and force him out of the company. Madeline responded with cold precision. "No one instructed you to ignore a confirmed appointment. No one told your executives to mock her demand identification twice or admit unregistered guests before her. A trap does not create behavior, Victor. It reveals it." Cornered, Victor turned on June Alvarez. He said reception had failed to communicate Simone's identity and caused the entire misunderstanding. June stood rigid behind the desk, her hands trembling. Simone looked at her. "Read the instructions you received." June glanced over her shoulder. Caleb Winslow was standing only a few feet away, watching her with a warning in his eyes. For several seconds she said nothing. Then she reached for her work phone, opened the message history, and read aloud. "Keep the woman in the red suit outside. Do not let her interrupt the meeting until the principal representative arrives." The sender's name appeared clearly at the top, Caleb Winslow. A quiet wave of shock moved through the employees watching from the corridor. Caleb immediately claimed it had been a routine security decision. He said Simone's arrival did not match the profile expected for such a major client, and that he had acted to protect the executive floor. Protect it from what, Simone asked. A woman whose identity had already been confirmed. Before Caleb could answer, Lena Park stepped out from the group near the elevators. Her voice was unsteady, but she forced herself to continue. She told the board that she had warned Caleb that the woman in the lobby might be the founder of Hayes Meridian. She also described his response, including his comment that people managing $500 million did not arrive without guards. Lena then confirmed that Caleb had called Simone an administrative candidate and had ordered security to verify her identification again. Victor immediately ordered Human Resources to suspend Lena for disclosing internal matters without authorization. Simone turned toward the screen. "Any witness participating in this due diligence review is protected from retaliation," she said. Suspending her now would create another material violation before the board has finished documenting the first one. The company's outside counsel nodded and advised Victor to withdraw the order. He did so, but only after the damage had been seen by everyone. Madeline confirmed that the visit had been designed as an ethical review, but she added that neither she nor Simone had expected anyone to interfere with security footage. That changed the nature of the investigation. The discrimination in the lobby was serious, but the attempted deletion suggested that someone feared more than embarrassment. It indicated knowledge, intent, and possibly a history of similar conduct. Victor insisted the camera issue was probably a technical error. Caleb agreed too quickly. Owen Price said nothing, but his eyes moved between them. Lena reached into her jacket pocket and removed a small encrypted storage drive. She held it tightly before placing it on the reception desk. "I think I know why they are afraid of the footage being preserved," she said. "This is not the first time a client has been treated this way." The 3 hours Simone had spent in the lobby were no longer the entire case. They were only the newest entry in a record Victor believed had been buried for years. The glass conference room beside the executive lobby was opened under the supervision of Arcadia Quantum's outside counsel, but Simone Hayes insisted that the doors remain unlocked and partially open. What had begun as a private humiliation would not be quietly buried behind tinted glass. Lena Park connected her encrypted drive to the main display, and 8 months of emails, salary records, complaint files, and internal hiring notes appeared on the screen. The first document was a list of management candidates. Beside, several names were phrases that sounded professional, until the pattern became impossible to ignore, not aligned with the client image. Too outspoken on social issues. Name may be difficult for customers. Better suited for a back-office role. Most of the candidates marked with those descriptions were Black, Latino, Asian, or Middle Eastern. Many had stronger performance records than the candidates who advanced. Yet executive-facing positions repeatedly went to people Victor Langford described in private emails as possessing the traditional Arcadia look. Victor immediately objected. He accused Lena of removing comments from their proper context and turning ordinary business language into evidence of discrimination. Lena changed the display to compensation data. Black and Latino employees with nearly identical performance ratings received smaller bonuses, fewer retention grants, and slower promotion cycles. The same pattern appeared in client relations. Several minority business owners had been held in the lobby, asked for repeated identification, or redirected to junior employees even when they controlled major accounts. Simone looked through the open door toward the blue chair where she had waited. Her experience was not an exception. It was a procedure. Regina Wolfe, Arcadia's head of human resources, joined the meeting after being summoned by the board. She admitted that complaints had been filed, but claimed most lacked sufficient evidence for a formal investigation. Lena immediately opened one of the cases. It involved a Black senior engineer who reported being excluded from leadership meetings after challenging a promotion decision. Human Resources had closed the complaint within 24 hours without interviewing the woman's manager, colleagues, or witnesses. Another case involving a Latino sales director had been reclassified as a communication dispute even though his report described repeated comments about his accent and appearance. Victor shifted his attack from the evidence to Lena herself. He announced that she had recently been denied a promotion and accused her of collecting documents as revenge. For a moment, Lena's composure broke. Her voice tightened, and she looked as though she might defend every detail of her own career. Simone did not rescue her with an emotional speech. Instead, she turned to Victor. "Explain the emails," she said. Not her motivation, the content. Victor spoke about market expectations, client comfort, and executive presentation. But he could not explain why those standards consistently punished the same groups. Caleb Winslow insisted that phrases such as client image were common corporate terminology and had nothing to do with race. Simone then displayed the file of Dr. Nia Brooks, a Black systems engineer with the highest performance score in her division. Nia had been rejected for a leadership position because executives claimed she lacked cultural alignment. 3 weeks later, the job went to a less experienced man who had played golf with Victor for years. The room grew colder when Simone revealed that Hayes Meridian had hired an independent due diligence firm 6 weeks earlier. That team had already found unusual differences in promotion rates, compensation, and complaint classifications. Lena's files did not create the suspicion. They confirmed it. She was also not the only employee who had raised concerns. Several former workers had spoken confidentially to outside investigators, But Lena was the first person willing to bring original internal records directly into the company's executive floor. Madeline Cross asked to see Arcadia's official ethics disclosure submitted for the $500 million transaction. The document stated that the company had received no significant discrimination complaints during the previous 5 years. Lena opened the complaint archive and showed 37 separate cases. Each had been recoded as a personal conflict, performance concern, or management misunderstanding before the disclosure was prepared. The meaning of the investigation changed instantly. Arcadia was no longer facing only a damaging cultural scandal. The company might have knowingly submitted false information to secure $500 million. Owen Price pulled the credit agreements onto his laptop and read the relevant provisions twice before speaking. If material misrepresentation is confirmed, Hayes Meridian would not be the only party with the right to withdraw, he said. Our banks could reopen the credit facilities that are currently keeping this company operational. Victor stared at the financial documents without answering. He finally understood that he was no longer fighting to save one contract. He was fighting to stop his entire corporate empire from collapsing before the end of the day. By noon, the crisis inside Arcadia Quantum had escaped the 42nd floor. Employees on lower levels gathered around phones trading rumors about Simone Hayes, the $500 million agreement, and the executive meeting that had gone silent. Outside the Manhattan headquarters, financial reporters began assembling behind barricades, waiting for confirmation that the company's most important deal was in danger. Victor Langford understood that he could no longer win with documents. His only remaining weapon was the story the public heard first. Caleb Winslow moved before anyone authorized him. Using footage recorded by an employee's phone, he created a short clip showing only Simone standing before Victor and warning that the investment could be frozen. The hours of waiting forced identity checks, insults, and the order to keep her outside were removed. The edited video reached a financial columnist under the headline, $500 million investor threatens to pull funding over personal dispute, putting 8,000 jobs at risk. Within minutes, it spread across social media. Simone was called arrogant, vindictive, oversensitive, and willing to punish thousands of workers over a minor reception mistake. Victor pretended to be shocked by the leak. He told Simone the situation had become unsafe and suggested she leave until emotions cooled. When she refused, he ordered security to escort her out for disrupting operations. Martin Cole, the officer forced to check Simone's identification twice, stepped forward and stopped. He looked toward Victor, then toward the screen where Madeline Cross and the board remained connected. Madeline's voice cut through the lobby. Mr. Langford no longer has unilateral authority to remove a guest participating in an official due diligence investigation. Martin lowered his hands. Victor's face tightened. Unable to remove Simone, Victor tried to corner her morally. He spoke about payroll, unfinished projects, mortgages, and families dependent on Arcadia. If you freeze this agreement, 8,000 employees will pay for your decision, he said. Simone answered without raising her voice. Your deception placed those employees in danger. Accountability did not. Below them, however, staff members had seen only the edited clip. Some began posting angry messages accusing Simone of holding the company hostage. Lena Park's name was leaked online, and within an hour, she received hundreds of threats. Caleb then approached Simone with a confidentiality agreement. Arcadia would issue a private apology, donate to a racial equity organization, and classify the mourning as an unfortunate misunderstanding. Simone pushed the paper back. You cannot buy a diversity plaque to cover a system that retaliates against employees. While Victor and Caleb continued their performance, Lena accessed the technical logs with help from a systems analyst. The edited clip had been exported from a communications computer using Caleb's credentials. More damaging, the export occurred before Victor formally declared a media crisis. Caleb had begun preparing the smear campaign almost immediately after learning Simone's identity. Then the security team recovered partial audio from the lobby, footage marked for deletion. Caleb's voice came first. Remove the part where she was held outside. Keep only the section where she threatens the agreement. A second voice followed, unmistakably Victor's. Do it before the board gets a copy. The room went still. The leak was no accident, and the missing footage was no technical failure. It was a coordinated attempt to destroy context, discredit a witness, and manipulate public fear. Owen Price quietly closed the conference room door. He placed a thick financial file on the table and looked directly at Madeline. If they were willing to erase video, he said, then these numbers may be the real reason. The discrimination had exposed Victor's character. Owen's file was about to reveal that it also protected a hidden flow of money. Early that afternoon, the investigation moved from the executive lobby to Arcadia Quantum's internal finance room, where Owen Price placed 3 years of vendor records before Simone Hayes, Madeline Cross, the independent auditors, and the board's legal counsel. The numbers told a story far more dangerous than executive arrogance. Owen explained that Caleb Winslow had repeatedly directed major consulting contracts toward a small group of companies without full competitive bidding. Vendors, owned by Black, Latino, and other minority entrepreneurs, had often submitted lower prices and stronger technical proposals, yet their applications were rejected with familiar phrases: poor cultural fit, difficult client presentation, or not aligned with Arcadia's image. The work was then awarded to firms connected personally to Victor Langford and Caleb. One consulting company had received tens of millions of dollars despite having no physical office, no full-time staff, and almost no documented work product. Corporate records showed that the business was registered to Victor's brother. The discrimination inside Arcadia was no longer merely a matter of prejudice. It had become a method of removing vendors who might ask uncomfortable questions about inflated invoices, secret relationships, and irregular approval procedures. Owen opened the file of a former black auditor named Tasha Reed who had noticed unexplained payments 2 years earlier. After requesting a deeper review, she had been transferred to an unrelated department and placed under a sudden performance investigation. Within 3 months, she had resigned. Victor immediately attacked Owen, accusing him of concealing financial problems until the moment he needed protection. Owen did not deny his failure. "I stayed silent longer than I should have," he admitted. "I was afraid of losing my job." Then he displayed emails, proving that he had warned Victor about the consulting payments on several occasions. Victor had replied that the vendors were strategically important and ordered Owen not to delay their invoices. Caleb realized Victor was preparing to sacrifice him. He turned toward the board and declared that every major vendor had received final approval from the CEO. Victor denied it and claimed his electronic signature had been used without permission. The independent auditors examined authentication records, device locations, and approval times. Several contracts had been authorized from Victor's personal phone while he was attending golf events with the owners of the companies receiving the money. One approval had been completed less than an hour after Victor was photographed dining with his brother and Caleb. The technical evidence made the denial almost impossible to sustain. Simone reviewed the documents in silence before issuing her decision. Hayes Meridian would freeze the $500 million transaction immediately, but she would not terminate it. Instead, she demanded that any future operating funds be placed under independent control, separated from Victor, Caleb, and the current executive chain. The purpose was not to punish innocent employees or interrupt payroll. It was to prevent the people under investigation from accessing more money while evidence was preserved. Victor accused her of attempting a hostile takeover. Simone answered calmly, "Protecting workers from executive misconduct is not a takeover. It is the minimum condition for continued negotiation." The turning point came when the auditors recovered an old audio file from Tasha Reed's archived records. Caleb's voice could be heard explaining that vendors who did not fit the image should never be allowed deep enough into Arcadia's financial system to examine billing structures. The same language used to exclude employees and clients had served as a code for protecting the fraudulent network. Prejudice had not simply existed beside the corruption, it had helped hide it. Madeline called for an emergency board vote to suspend Victor and Caleb. As the directors prepared to respond, she noticed one board member repeatedly checking a private message thread. The recipient was Victor. Someone inside the room was quietly helping him delay the vote. Victor was close to losing control, but he still had an ally powerful enough to destroy the investigation before the board could act. At 4 o'clock, the Arcadia Quantum boardroom no longer felt like a place of authority. It felt like a courtroom. Outside the building, reporters crowded behind barricades while employees refreshed internal updates on their phones, waiting to learn whether the company's leaders would survive the day. Inside, June Alvarez testified first. Her voice shook, but her account did not. She confirmed that Simone Hayes' full name, appointment time, and executive clearance had appeared correctly in the visitor system before 9 that morning. She had informed Caleb Winslow twice, yet he ordered her to keep Simone outside until the real representative arrived. Martin Cole followed. He admitted that Victor Langford had personally approved the second identity check, even though security records had already verified Simone. Lena Park then presented the emails showing how 37 discrimination complaints had been reclassified to keep them out of Arcadia's official ethics disclosures. Owen Price completed the sequence by displaying the suspicious vendor payments, inflated contracts, and executive approvals linked to Victor's associates. Piece by piece, the defense of misunderstanding collapsed. Victor responded by pushing every accusation toward Caleb. He claimed that a chief executive overseeing thousands of employees could not possibly know every message sent, every visitor delayed, or every vendor selected. Caleb stared at him in disbelief. For years he had protected Victor, carried out his instructions, and absorbed the risk. Now Victor was presenting him as a rogue employee. Caleb opened his private phone and handed it to the independent counsel. The messages were direct. Victor had instructed him which candidates should remain behind the scenes, which vendors should be blocked from deeper financial access, and which complaints should be treated as performance disputes. One message ordered Caleb to keep the woman in red outside until we know who she really is. Another told him to remove the lobby footage before the board obtained it. Victor accused Caleb of editing the messages. Caleb accused Victor of building an entire system and expecting others to take the fall. Their alliance disintegrated in front of the board, each man exposing the other in a desperate attempt to survive. When the evidence became impossible to deny, Victor changed tactics. He offered to resign with dignity, accept a compensation package, and sign an agreement promising not to sue Arcadia. In exchange, he wanted the investigative report sealed to protect shareholders and prevent further market damage. Several directors appeared tempted. Simone objected immediately. A private resignation would allow Victor to leave with money, reputation, and the opportunity to rebuild the same system elsewhere. During a short recess, Victor requested a private conversation with her. She agreed only if independent counsel remained present. He offered Hayes Meridian expanded contractual control, lower service costs, and additional financial advantages if Simone agreed not to send the evidence to regulators. Simone turned to the attorney. "Please record that proposal in the minutes." Victor's restraint finally broke. He accused her of destroying a company to prove a personal point. Simone looked at him without anger. "You still believe this is about the 3 hours I spent in your lobby? It is about the people who waited for years while no one listened." The board proceeded to vote on the immediate suspension of Victor and Caleb. The result was tied. Harold Vance, one of Arcadia's longest-serving directors, voted against suspension and argued that the investigation remained incomplete. Victor's expression softened for the first time all afternoon. Then Lena noticed a familiar surname in the vendor records. The registered representative of one shell company shared the maiden name of Harold's wife. She pulled up corporate filings and found payments routed through an entity connected to the Vance family trust. Harold might not simply have been defending Victor out of loyalty. He could have a direct financial interest in the fraudulent contract network. Madeline Cross immediately suspended the vote and ordered the legal team to investigate Harold's accounts, communications, and conflicts of interest. Harold protested, but his access to board materials was temporarily restricted. Across the table, Victor smiled faintly. The delay had given him what he needed: time. While the lawyers examined Harold's connections, Victor opened his laptop and began drafting a message to all 8,000 Arcadia employees. Its meaning was simple and brutal: protect him, or prepare to lose everything. By the end of the day, Arcadia Quantum's headquarters had become a building divided by fear. Hundreds of employees gathered in the main lobby reading Victor Langford's company-wide email on their phones, while the board remained locked in deliberations 42 floors above them. Victor claimed Hayes Meridian was using a minor reception incident as an excuse to seize control of Arcadia. He warned that the $500 million agreement could collapse, projects could be canceled, and 8,000 employees could lose their jobs. At the bottom of the message, he urged workers to sign an emergency petition, demanding that the board keep him in power. The strategy worked immediately. Employees who had not seen the full evidence began to panic. Some blamed Simone Hayes for threatening their salaries. Others argued that Victor's behavior might have been offensive, but did not justify destroying the company. The edited video continued circulating online, and fear began doing what Victor could no longer do himself, turning the people he had endangered into shields for his position. Simone refused to answer through a press release. She left the executive floor with Madeline Cross, Lena Park, and Owen Price, and went directly to the main lobby. The crowd became restless when she appeared. A few employees demanded to know whether she intended to withdraw the investment. Others shouted that their families could not survive a corporate collapse. Simone waited until the noise weakened. Then she announced that Hayes Meridian had designed a protected operating fund. The money would still be available to cover payroll, preserve active projects, support customers, and maintain essential operations. However, Victor Caleb Winslow and every executive under investigation would be denied access to it. Independent financial supervisors would control each transfer until the investigation ended. Removing a CEO does not require destroying a company, Simone said. Those are two different things, and Mr. Langford needs you to believe they are the same. The statement shattered the center of Victor's argument. Employees no longer had to choose between their jobs and accountability. Lena then connected a verified copy of the full lobby footage to the main display. The crowd watched Simone arrive on time. They saw unregistered white businessmen admitted ahead of her, heard Caleb mock her, watched security verify her identity twice, and listened as Victor ordered portions of the recording removed after discovering who she was. The edited clip that had enraged employees now looked exactly like what it was, a weapon built from missing context. Silence spread across the lobby. Then the first worker stepped forward. A former department manager said she had been demoted after questioning racial differences in performance bonuses. An engineer admitted his team had been ordered to adjust diversity figures before an investor review. A former vendor revealed that Arcadia had rejected his company after he questioned inflated consulting costs. One testimony became 5 became 20. The people Victor had expected to defend him began describing the system he had built. Upstairs, the financial review confirmed that Harold Vance held an indirect interest in one of the shell companies receiving Arcadia contracts. He was removed from the vote because of an undisclosed conflict of interest. The board voted again. This time, Victor was suspended immediately. Caleb was terminated for evidence, destruction, witness retaliation, and media manipulation. The suspicious financial records were referred to outside authorities. Victor left the boardroom without speaking. To reach the elevators, he had to cross the executive lobby and pass the blue chair where Simone had waited for hours. That morning, doors had opened for him before he touched them. Now no assistant moved. No one offered to carry his files. No one protected him from the eyes of the employees watching through the glass. Many directors expected Simone to sign the agreement as soon as Victor was gone. Instead, she closed the contract and said Arcadia had removed 2 executives, but had not yet proved it could change the structure that protected them. Her final condition was that real oversight power be shared with employee representatives, independent ethics specialists, and people previously harmed by the company's policies. They would receive access to promotion data, compensation reviews, supplier decisions, and retaliation complaints. One director asked whether Simone was truly prepared to surrender profits and contractual control to create such a system. Simone looked around the room at the people who had spent years waiting to be heard. If this deal only replaces one powerful person with another, she said, then we have repaired nothing. The $500 million agreement would be signed, but not in any form Arcadia's executives or its investors had ever imagined. 6 months later, Arcadia Quantum no longer looked like the company Simone Hayes had entered on that Monday morning. The marble floors and glass walls remained, but the culture behind them had begun to change. Hayes Meridian had not transferred the full $500 million at once. Instead, the agreement was divided into carefully controlled stages, and every release of funding depended on measurable reforms. Arcadia was required to publish the results of the independent investigation, compensate employees who had suffered retaliation, remove biased recruitment practices, audit every major supplier contract, and establish a whistleblower channel, completely outside the CEO's authority. Employee representatives were given permanent seats on the ethics committee, while promotion statistics, salary gaps, and disciplinary patterns had to be released each year. The money was no longer a reward for promises. It was leverage tied to proof. Arcadia would receive each new investment only after demonstrating that the previous reform had been completed. Owen Price remained chief financial officer, but not without consequences. His cooperation had helped expose the fraud, yet the board refused to pretend his years of silence had caused no harm. Every major financial decision now required review by an independent supervisor, and Owen publicly acknowledged that fear had kept him quiet when responsibility should have made him speak. June Alvarez was cleared of blame, and invited to help redesign the company's visitor procedures. The new system did not divide guests according to clothing, title, wealth, or whether they arrived with assistance. Every visitor followed the same identity process, and every confirmed appointment received the same basic respect. Lena Park was not rewarded with a glamorous executive title designed for headlines. Instead, she joined the independent oversight team, where she had direct access to compensation, data, complaint records, supplier decisions, and board communications. Her reports bypassed management entirely. Employees whose careers had been damaged were given new hearings. Some returned to Arcadia with restored titles and back pay. Others chose not to return but received compensation, public apologies, and corrections to the records that had followed them to new jobs. Former suppliers were invited to resubmit contracts through a transparent bidding system. Victor Langford and Caleb Winslow remained under investigation for fraud, retaliation, evidence destruction, and manipulation of financial disclosures. Their careers had collapsed, but Simone took no pleasure in watching it happen. She had never viewed another person's downfall as proof of her own victory. Punishment mattered, but reform mattered more. When Simone returned to the 42nd floor for the first 6-month review, she noticed the blue chair still standing in the corner of the executive lobby. Beside it was a small plaque. It mentioned no investment, no famous executive, and no amount of money. It read, "No one should have to prove their value before being treated with respect." A young employee recognized Simone and hurried toward the private access gate. "Dr. Hayes, you can use the VIP entrance," he said. Simone thanked him but declined. She joined the regular line and waited while every visitor passed through the same security procedure. The difference was not that powerful people received faster treatment. The difference was that no one was treated as suspicious simply because they did not look powerful. Madeline Cross met Simone near the glass doors and asked whether the 3 humiliating hours had ever made her regret saving the deal. Simone looked toward the crowded offices below. Canceling the agreement might have punished Victor quickly, she explained, but it would also have punished thousands of employees who never created the system and never benefited from it. She had not saved Arcadia because its former CEO deserved protection. She had saved the people trapped beneath his decisions. Real justice was not burning the entire building to remove one corrupt man. It was removing the corruption without abandoning those who had been forced to live inside it. Victor had not lost his position because he failed to recognize a $500 million client. He lost it because he believed only a person controlling $500 million deserved immediate respect. Simone never needed to reveal her wealth to establish her dignity. The way Victor treated her before learning who she was had already revealed everything about him. As Simone entered the review meeting, Lena's phone vibrated. A new message had arrived from an employee at another Arcadia branch. It contained only 2 sentences. "The same things are still happening here. I have evidence." Justice had reached the Manhattan headquarters, but the fight to transform the entire company had only begun. Simone Hayes never needed $500 million to prove she deserved respect. That money only exposed the kind of people who believed dignity should be reserved for the powerful. Victor did not lose everything because he failed to recognize an important client. He lost it because he revealed exactly how he treated someone he thought was unimportant. And instead of destroying the company for revenge, Simone used her power to protect the workers, expose the truth, and force real change. What would you have done after being humiliated for 3 hours? Walk away or stay and expose the entire system? Share your answer in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories where justice arrives when arrogance least expects it.